Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see you today at our event that is focused on trust. And with me today, I have my most wonderful guests who are experts in trust. I will go around and let them introduce themselves before we dive into the conversation that I'm very much looking forward to. Michael, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Michael. I am uh, based in Switzerland and I'm an expert in trust. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I'm certainly very interested in trust. So, studying trust for 4 years now. Before that, I've been working in big multinational corporations as a marketing and sales manager. And since 2020, 2021, I focus on the subject of trust, trust in organizations, interpersonal trust, and conflict.
Thank you. Great to see you here. Thijs, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Thijs. I'm the CEO of Dedicate, and we are a printing business based in Belgium and France. It's a family company. So my father founded the company 45 years ago, and the second generation took over in 2009, and I became the CEO of Dedicate in 2013. So that's for 11 years now that I'm at the head of the company. And we've done quite a few acquisitions and quite a nice growth thanks to these acquisitions. We have several companies. We are with 300 people at the moment. I would not say that I'm an expert in trust, but it's something that is very important for our company because we are very much focused on customer intimacy or customer centrality. And so therefore yeah, I think trust is the most important currency to be able to have this strategy. So we will go on that later on.
Thank you. And am I right in thinking that your business is the only printing business in Belgium that has grown consistently despite the overall decline in the industry and COVID and all the other challenges we had in the world?
True.
So I think you are an expert in trust, but we'll deep dive into that later. Lauren.
Hi, really happy to be here. My name is Marie Sandmeier. My background is actually in anesthesia, so I've come quite a long ways from that. And for the last several years, I've been studying the reason why we trust, who we trust, where those concepts come from, and applying them, how we can apply them in our everyday life. So I'm really happy to have this conversation, and I'm really excited to hear more from Tess and learn a little bit, share a little bit, and happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And as customer experience management professionals, we are interested in trust because that feels like the glue that unites the organization. At ECC, we build harmonious business models, which means aligning technology, people, process, leadership, and experience. Obviously, aligning that around a company purpose. But why would anyone believe a company if they don't have the trust of their customers and the employees? So today I'm very much looking forward to the insights that you guys have to offer on this subject. So Taz, what does it take to build trust with customers? Please
Yeah.
give us a bit more of a background into your company and how you've done it.
Okay. So indeed, I think some background can be useful. With our strategy, we really focus on customer intimacy. So that means that we always are looking for customers with whom we can establish long-term relationships. We're not interested in one-shots. Like for example, with the elections right now, it's once every 5 years, so it's very difficult to establish a long-term relationship. That's not really what we are looking for. We look for customers with whom we can work on a daily or on a weekly basis, because they are specifically looking for the best service, and that's something that we can give them or that we can offer them. It's really the customer that wants to be relieved, that wants to be unburdened, that wants to be 100% sure that everything is in good hands and that it's under control. That's a customer for us. And to have this kind of relationship, as I mentioned in the introduction, I think that the most important currency, to say it in that way, is trust. You have to be trustworthy to your customer, and it's typically something that takes quite some time to establish. It's something that grows over several months, even years, and you always set a high bar that you must continue to meet. So it's always work in progress, because every time that you meet the bar just raises a bit, and you always have to be a bit better than last time. That's also why we all know the saying that trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. That's also something that's very true, I think. So building that trust and keeping up with it, it's the most important thing that we have to do. How do you do it? I think it's especially in situations where things get a bit challenging, that you can earn you can earn trust, or you can build distrust. As I explained, we are a production company, so that means that sometimes things go wrong. That's just a given for us. Machines can have a breakdown. The planning can get too full, for example, or quality requirements can sometimes not be met because the air is too hot or too cold or too dry. So there are a lot of chemical processes that can go wrong, and therefore go wrong from time to time. And it's especially when you're in that kind of situation that you have to be honest about it. You don't try to hide it, but you explain what has happened to your customer, and also, of course, how you are trying or you are solving it. And for us, it's unforgivable that a customer wouldn't trust the things that we tell them. So a very important quote for us in the company is, do what you say and say what you do. It's very simple to say it, but it's so hard to follow. It's so hard to do, because I think as a human being, we always tend to lie a bit about it, or we tend to cover things up a bit to reassure the customer. But if it's not the truth, I don't feel that's the thing that you should do. I think another aspect of trust is the fact that we don't work with contracts, for example. If a customer wants to work with us, that's fine. But if he wants to leave, that's fine as well. So we don't try to force him to continue to work with us, because I believe that sooner or later this can have the opposite effect. The fact that his hands are tied gives him the feeling that maybe he should try to come loose. And that's something we don't want at all. Of course, we do have contracts with customers because sometimes it's important for their internal organization to have a contract. And so when we receive one, we sign it. But to be honest, we barely read it because we don't feel it's very important for us. If it's important for them, we do it. And that's it. And we've worked like this for more than 10 years, and we never had a problem with it. So see that Olga is away, but that's more or less how we try to work with trust.
So Tess, it sounds like when I hear you speak, I hear a lot of emphasis being put on a culture of mutual respect.
True.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. I really believe that if you treat each other as adult beings, then people will behave like adult beings. But if you treat them like a child, or if you're not always honest to them, you will create that behavior with them as well. So it's, for me, very important to be, because like I said, it's something, it's a reflex that we sometimes have. It's something we do naturally as a human being. If you read about it, every human being tells a lie every day. So it's something that becomes very natural to do, and you have to be able to recognize it and to react against it, so that you don't go in that in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I heard you mention also integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, aligning your expectations with what's possible for the customer. And I think what you mentioned just a moment ago about the very natural human tendency to lie, to make things bigger or better than they really actually are, it kind of sets you up for failure later on down the line.
Yeah. It's what they call expectation management. If you build up the expectations too high and you're not able to meet, then actually you know from before that it will go wrong, or that the customer will not be happy. But if you're very honest from the beginning about the situation, then it's also good expectation management, because the customer knows what to expect, and he will not be sad or disappointed afterwards if you didn't meet the standards that you said you would meet.
Do you find, I have found in my own life, in my own business, that when I do exactly what you just mentioned about aligning my expectations with what I can actually deliver, it tends to be self-selecting for my customers, meaning I tend to end up with customers who kind of can handle the truth from the beginning, and customers who I'm actually able to help because their expectations are in line with what I can actually do.
Well, I would say that's exactly what you would want, because it's always better to, even with your employees, if you have a very clear culture or a very clear standard that you follow, then you will receive in a certain way the customers and the employees that you have earned. If everything is not so very clear, then also your customers and your employees and your culture will not be very clear. Sometimes it will be a bit of this or maybe a bit of that. But if you're very clear about things from the beginning, you will attract the people that are attracted to that. And of course, you will not attract the people who say, this is not how I want to work. But that's nice. That's okay. That's what you want, because they are not the right customer for your company.
Yeah.
So basically,
and that.
Sorry, Olga, if you're
No, this is developing to be such an interesting discussion, and I have a couple of questions, but I'll let you go first, Michael.
Thank you, Olga. So what you're saying, Thijs, is basically, if you're a trustworthy organization, you ultimately work with trustworthy customers and clients, right?
True, of course.
So what my question is, or what Lauren and I with our work often scratch our heads about, is how does this transition, how can this transition work, right? So you are very convinced of trust as an important aspect. You as a person, as a CEO, right? You also said, and I very much support that, trust becomes critical when things go bad.
True.
Right? It's easy to trust as long as everything is fine and all the tasks with the customers, etc., are perfect. But when something goes wrong, then trust becomes critical. So how do you, as a CEO, manage to empower everyone to give this trust into the relationship with the client?
Well, first of all, I would not say that it's easy to build trust when everything is okay. Because when everything is okay, you're not challenged as a supplier, and everything just looks normal. So But if you work for a customer for a long time, I would say for a year or more, then sooner or later you will have discussions, you will have misinterpretations, you will have sometimes productions that fail, you will have delays, for example. So if you work intensively together, it's when these things, the little things that go wrong, and your reaction to it,
Yes.
that build the trust. So I really feel that you need the challenge to really be able to build something. It's a small nuance, but it's just something that popped up in my head. And if you want the culture of trust, let's be honest about it, the culture starts from above. So if the CEO says something and does something else, then you can 100% be sure that all the other people will do the same, because they tend to imitate more or less the behavior that they see from the boss, right? To put it that way. It's not that we have a very hierarchical company with the CEO and then all the top management and the middle management and so on. But you do have a certain, you are an example for a lot of people. So the way that we behave, or that I behave, is very important. Is a very important prediction about how other people will behave. And so what is very important for me as well is to be very transparent, and I would say brutally honest about the mistakes I make myself. So for me, it's something that I tend to communicate about quite often when we are in a discussion or when I give a presentation. Then I really like to say in this process or in this meeting, I really made a mistake. I didn't listen to this argument, or I was thinking about this, but I was forgetting about something else because of this reason. So by making yourself vulnerable all the time, and showing them that it's really okay to make all these mistakes, but you did it with good intentions. So it's not about being punished. It's just about recognizing the fact that you can do better. I think if you repeat that quite often, then you see exactly the same with many of your employees. They start doing the same. They start saying, that was maybe something that I could have done better if I had thought about this, or if I had spoken with that person. And then you are motivating each other to think about yourself and other people in that way, without the aspect of blaming or of guilt in that. And once this is in your organization, I feel it's quite easy to make the transition to your customer, because it's more or less natural behavior in the company.
And it's something that I'd like to pick up on in a lot more detail, because you've just demonstrated how employee trust it translates into customer trust, and the same basic principles apply. So let's park this for a moment, and going back to the customer experience and loyalty angle of trust, we have a couple of questions from the audience on loyalty specifically. So first, I'd like to put forward to the group is, how would you define and measure loyalty? And Taji, I liked your example about contracts, right? Loyalty is a free will. They stay if they like it, they go if they don't. Lauren, Michael, do you have anything to add to trust-based loyalty definition?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just really fantastic to, as like somebody who preaches about this stuff all day long, it was so nice to hear Tess speaking, because it was so clear for me that he could understand and really more than understand cognitively, but really living out these principles. And that's the only way to move forward. So I just wanted to close that out. It's really lovely to hear. But Micha, would you like to share about loyalty?
Yeah, loyalty is very closely linked to trust, and I love this question about definition and measuring loyalty, because what trust is able to do is to create attitudinal loyalty, that people really want to be loyal to you, to your company, to your brand. The opposite of, or the other form of loyalty is just the transactional loyalty that is based on there is no one else offering that, or you just offer the best price, or you're best available, right? So the advantage of attitudinal loyalty is that it goes beyond just price and availability. So attitudinal loyalty is actually what we always want as companies, as brands. And that was a big topic when I was working in the past for Nespresso, like big love brand for many people. How do we create and maintain attitudinal loyalty? And this attitudinal loyalty is so closely linked to trust, because once people trust your brand, not just that you always offer the best discounts, or that you're at every corner like your favorite coffee shop, once you really trust the brand, then you're going to be loyal, not only beyond price and availability, but also when mistakes happen, when errors happen, when production lots go wrong, if whatever can happen and will happen, ultimately, as Tess said, then attitudinal loyalty help you as a brand. And this is something that we found out in our studies, that trust has a direct impact on this attitudinal loyalty and helps to strengthen that for your brand.
So to summarize and play it back, it's customers who are loyal are more willing to forgive.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there was a study by PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2022 that measured even that. And they found out that the willingness to forgive to a high trust brand versus a low trust brand is like 350% higher. So this has a direct impact on not only your everyday business, but also imagine your innovation power. How when you launch a new product, when you ramp up a new production line, etc. There's so much that can go wrong. And as a high trust organization with a lot of trust from your customers, your risk is just lower.
And have you ever? Sorry, just to pick up on what you said earlier in terms of price wars, and we know that there are highly commoditized markets where they got themselves into a situation of, buy two get three free or whatever. And were there any brands who could get themselves out of price wars by developing more trust with their customers?
Yeah, I mentioned before the example of Nespresso. That is one major pillar of Nespresso. There's one major pillar also why they don't go, or at that point in time did not go into retail, because they didn't want to get commoditized. But mainly the strong brand of Nespresso prevented them from being forced to go into this price wars. So the Nespresso capsule is around 50 cents since 2003. It's always at 50 cent, 51 cent, and people are paying that. Why? I mean, I don't know who's an Nespresso customer here, but Nespresso has put a lot of effort in trust building with their customers. One example is the customer service, and that also bridges to this employee trust, because that's what Nespresso does in the customer service center is they give every customer service rep €100 budget per day that they can do whatever they want in favor of the customer. So if someone calls and has a problem, they can just decide for themselves as a customer service representative to give free coffee to the person who calls. And so this trust that Nespresso gives to their customer service representatives then also helps to build trust with the customer. And this is just one example of how Nespresso, for an example, builds trust with their customer in order to strengthen loyalty.
Nice. There are so many questions coming from the audience, and I have a lot. And I also interrupted Taz, so I'll let him go first before I ask my next question.
Well, the last thing I heard, there was another company, I forget which one, who had a flower budget. And the flower budget was merely, look, you have this budget to buy flowers for the customers whenever something goes wrong, but also when you want to celebrate a very good relationship or something went very well, you can also send flowers to the customers. Very easy. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and it makes a real difference for a lot of customers. But to come back on the first question, namely, how can you measure loyalty? Olga, you know me a bit. I'm a man of very simple things. I always like to have common sense and make it very simple. And for me, measuring loyalty is very easy. Namely, it's how long does a customer stay with your company, or does it leave the company? So in a customer intimate company like ours, the thing that we like to measure is how many companies are working with us for more than 5 years, for more than 10 years, for more than 15 years. And this really shows how loyal your customer base is, and how many new companies are coming after that 5 years or that 10 years. And if you have if you have a private relationship, you also tend to celebrate when you're together with someone for 5 years or for 10 years or for 15 years. So it makes sense to do the same with your customer. And if you want to make the link with trust, for me, it's common sense that the longer you have a relationship with someone, the more he will be prepared to forgive you if something goes wrong. I mean, just make the transition to your private life. If you are together with someone for 3 months and he or she cheats on you, you will probably leave that person. But if you are together with that person for 15 years or for 20 years, you will be maybe more forgivable, because you have built up this relationship, and it's way harder to leave that relationship after 20 years than after 3 months. And the same goes for me in a professional relationship.
It's like a deposit account, right? You pay into your trust account, and then you have the right to withdraw a little bit.
Yes, not too much.
Not too much, no, because then you'll go into debt.
Yeah.
And Beranger, that answers your question. Can we measure trust with retention rate and returning customers? By the looks of it, it's a yes, for sure. There was another question from Beranger, is what about the digital world, right? We touched on the customer support and how they could be given certain budget to put things right or to celebrate. We know when we have contracts with customers, but what types of initiatives can we specifically implement to build trust online? And I sense Lauren might have a few tricks up her sleeve.
Yeah, I love this question because it's very, very concrete. And I think we often tend to think of trust as being kind of fuzzy, but it is something that's very steerable. So what's coming to mind when I read this question is a company in Switzerland that sells, I think it's called tequilahouse.ch or something like that. And I'm from the US, and so I order quite a lot of tequila from this company. But they're a small company. They're not one of the big players when it comes to ordering alcohol online. But what they do in order to build trust with their customers is that they're very direct. So when you go to their website, you can see very clearly right at the top banner how much you need to spend in order to get free shipping, for example. It's very clearly communicated how I can get help as a customer. If I scroll down to the bottom, I can see directly an email address already written. So these kinds of like it seems small and something really easy, which is great. They're easy wins. But they're often things that when you go to other websites, you don't see. So I think that those are just two small things that maybe give you some ideas for your specific situation, Mr. Rowe.
And that probably adds to John's summary from the audience. He's saying trust is all about being honest, being fair, and acting with integrity. And I guess what you're saying, it's also being transparent and being easy to deal with.
Yeah, trust is actually, if you go back to these psychosocial stages of development as we grow. My background has a bit of neuroscience in it, so I'm gonna bring that to the table here. Trust is the very first block that we have to, or accomplishment we have to make. So the very first, before your brain is even completely developed, you're deciding whether or not you can trust or mistrust your parents, their caregivers, whoever's around you. So it's important to remember that trust is not, it's not communicated via words necessarily. That's why two people can say the same thing with the same words, and you'll trust one versus the other. It's a felt sense. Trust is something you feel. Very often people say it's a gut feeling. They don't know why they don't trust somebody, but they can feel that they don't trust. They feel that something is off. It's coming from the gut. We now know that we have two brains. You have your brain up here that everybody knows about, but you also have a brain in your gut. They're connected via the vagus nerve. And so when you have this kind of information where it feels like something's off, feels like something's not quite right, it's important to sit and to listen to that, because very often this old part of your brain is very quick and it can sense things before the prefrontal cortex has the chance to catch up. So just taking time, in your everyday life to slow down, to listen to what's really going on around you, to hear, to feel it, and to let it resonate with you, and see whether or not it feels like trustworthy or not is a really great way to kind of build up that inner sense that we all have.
And is that applicable to companies? Because as Bernard is rightly pointing out, your high retention rate can be mistaken for difficulty to switch, or just it's easier that way, I can't be bothered type of relationship, rather than full trust relationship. As a company leader or someone who's wanting to build a trustworthy company, can you rely on your gut feel to say, I actually feel something is wrong with our customer relationships, or is it all in the numbers?
I think when we take what Lauren just explained about how our brain works, it is more our job as CEOs, as leaders, as marketing managers, and so on, relationship management, to anticipate that what's going on in the brain at our customers' brains. You know what I mean? So we want to anticipate that the customer, many times per second that he spends on our website, is checking unconsciously whether he trusts the brand, the company, the offering or not. And that's where steering trust, building trust actively comes into play. If we know how the customer thinks about whether to trust or not, that's where we can start to actively do something about it, right? And what Lauren and I didn't mention that before in the introduction round. We have founded a company together called Better Problems. What we tried to do was to bring what this trust building, this everything that goes on in that old brain of ours and of our customers and employees, about how to trust or not to trust, bring that from the unconscious to the conscious. And we found out that our brains, even as babies already, we test everything with around 6 questions about how to trust. And one very important one is sincerity. This Thijs said, do what you say and say what you do, right? This is one question that all of our customers and employees and investors and partners, whoever interacts with our company, ask themselves constantly. Is this brand doing what they say? And do they really say what they mean? Right? And that, to circle back on the question, what can we do on our website, online shop, etc.? That could be one very precise thing to screen your website or web shop with. Do you, as a brand, as a company, on your website really say what you mean? And do you also deliver on what you say? Sounds simple, but is really worth a thought.
What are the other 5 to test trust? So sincerity is 1, and you said there were 6.
Yeah. So I'm sure Lauren will help me here, so I'm not monopolizing.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
But I can give you a second one that Thijs also mentioned, is situational security. We know that more trust is needed, the higher the risk to interact with someone. So Thijs' company does not work with contracts. So I can, as a client, I can leave whenever I want. So my situational risk to interact with you, Thijs, with your company, is relatively low.
Mm-hmm.
So that creates, first of all, trust in your company, because I am kind of impressed that you don't force me into some kind of Apple situation where I need to stick to the system, because otherwise I'm kind of busy for 3 days to change all my cloud stuff and plugs, etc. So I'm impressed. I trust you that you know what you're doing, that you're a great company, that you don't feel obliged to lock me into your system. And second is also, I don't need to trust you so much, because I can leave whenever I want. So this is the second, is the situational security. Lauren, you want to give one more?
I mean, I'm happy to go through all of this, but I know that we have a lot of questions, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time.
Well, yeah, anyone who's interested, do visit Better Problems website, and I'm sure all of the 6 parameters of trust are listed there, as well as some great case studies, by the way. I loved how you dissected some of the marketing materials printed on, I think it was bus stops.
Yeah.
And it's also in the language, how can words unintentionally drive people away. So I don't know, Lauren, if you want to, or Michael, either of you, elaborate on trust in marketing. Can we build trust with prospects? We don't have a relationship yet. We may not have even spoken to them, but why would they trust our brand?
Well, I think I'm going to leave this to Michael, because his background is in marketing. But I would question just a moment the question that you asked, which is that we don't have a relationship with them. We haven't even spoken. I'm not sure that that's correct, because any interaction that we have, whether they're visiting our website, whether they're calling, whether they're just seeing our product in the store, that's an interaction. That's the beginning of the building block towards a relationship. And if we don't manage, I think we all know as customer experience that if we don't manage those little places along the way, we're never going to get the chance to have a relationship.
So trust starts, like with babies. Trust starts the moment you see the brand.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's verbal. It's immediate.
I think trust starts when the relationship starts, and to take maybe the concept of customer experience management with the consumer journey, we talk about the consumer journey, not the customer journey, right? Because the consumer starts its relationship with us when he becomes first time aware of the brand, and then he's not a customer yet. So if I hear about a brand and I don't really understand what their offering is. That happens to me all the time. I think like, okay, so kind of like the logo and I like the idea behind it, but I don't really know what I get. So this is the trust driver of reliability. Do I really know what to expect? And if not, it's kind of hard to trust, right?
Taz, do you have anything to add to this in terms of trust and your future customers?
I think it's a very good question, but for me, it's also a very difficult one. Why? Because for me, one of the most important things that you need with trust is time, and of course, you haven't had much time with your prospects. So I think your first impression is very important. Not being too pushy, but just saying that you're there whenever someone needs you, without trying to have a first order straight away, for example. You cannot brag about how good you are. That's something that doesn't work. But maybe, and I think also in a digital world, that's something that does work, is having ambassadors. And ambassadors are just other customers with whom that you've worked for several years, who like to give you a compliment and to have to be a witness about how the relation and the collaboration with you was or has been in the last few years. If you have several like these ambassadors, if you can say like look, this is a company very much like yours. If you want to know how we work, please, you can just phone him and he will explain how it works. If you can do these little things, I think it can help. But then again, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, so you have to deliver afterwards, and it's something very difficult for me, because we see that for us it's quite easy to find new customers, but it's very difficult to say why. It's yeah. I'm still struggling with the question.
I suppose what we are touching on here is reputation. So when your customers become your ambassadors,
Yeah.
also what I take away personally from my business is that we seem to be doing something right by sharing freely and giving value before any contract is even on the agenda. It's the visibility, but also not just like, oh, look how great we are and we do all these projects. It's more around this LinkedIn Live is for people who are joining us, and we sincerely want them to learn from our networks and to be sharing some knowledge. So I'm confident now, after what you've said, that this does add to trust.
Yeah, if I can just share something, Tessa, it's actually shocking to me to hear you say that you don't know why you have a lot of repeat business, because every single thing that I've heard you say has lit up for me. This is someone that I would want to work with.
Okay, thank you.
Who is accountable. This is someone who who kind of gets it, who behaves like an adult, who understands that you have to give before you take. And one thing that you also mentioned that I don't think gets talked about enough is the fact that a relationship is a relationship is a relationship is a relationship. So the way that we interact in our personal life, if would anyone want to be in a relationship with me if I was controlling their every move, if I was making them sign a contract, if I was trying to force them? No, of course not. So it's very logical, but it's something that I think often gets forgotten about and not discussed enough in the business world.
Yes, and I think that a lot of the things that we do at our company is really just common sense, but for some reason, when we are in a professional context, we lose the common sense. That's just how it works. That's how many people or many companies think and act, but we don't question enough. Well, why is it really necessary? And yeah, I see a lot of companies doing a lot of strange things, and we just don't do it. So we that's the strange thing for me in our company, that we just don't do a lot of things, and by not doing them, we have a more open view, I think, and we are more. It's easier for us to have new relationships with new companies.
And have you ever had a situation, Taz, where you've recruited people who are used to, let's say, non common sense corporate environments, and they bring the practice with them, and they just start doing things that you wouldn't necessarily feel comply with common sense or the practices you have in the company? And if that happened, how did you deal with it?
So when we recruit new people, what we do, we have different conversations with different people. So at least 6 people in our company have already spoken with a person who would want to join us. And in these conversations, where I'm not included, they already talk about how we tackle things, what's our philosophy, what's our culture. And so what you get is that after 2 or 3 conversations, you get people who say, that's not really my cup of tea. This is not what I've been used to, and I don't want to change to that kind of atmosphere. Or you get people who say, whoa, this is something completely else. This is something for me. I want to try it. And so when you have the second person before you, they know that they are coming into a company where a lot of things are just common sense. To give another example, we have, I think, about 40 cars in our company. We don't have a car policy. We just say, just treat your car like it would be your own car, and that's it. And if you want to buy a new car after 4 years, just buy a new car. Here's the budget and leave me alone. That's more or less what I say. I don't want to talk about your car. I want to talk about your business, about your customer, about your well-being with your car. Just go and buy it and choose whatever you want. This is the budget, and do it. So once that you're in this kind of culture, I think it goes it's very quickly absorbed, or people very quickly go with that, because it's such an easy way to work and to live.
It's so much easier to have a trust-based culture than it is to have a control-based culture.
Again, it's just not doing many things, to be honest.
Yeah, you get to focus on what you actually are there for, not on like checking the logs to see like who took the car at this time. I mean,
but you say, Lauren, that it's so much easier, and I think all of us agree with that. But why is it not so common?
Well, I guess when I heard Tess say common sense, the first thing that came to my mind is a saying that we have in the US, which is that common sense is not so common. And I think if more companies and more people, more companies were we talk a lot about psychological safety, which is essentially the felt feeling that it's safe to come with your concerns. That if Tess is my boss and I come to him and say like, hey, this process is not working, that I'm not going to be blamed, and that we're going to look at the actual process and try to find the problem. And it sounds like, from my understanding of what's been shared today, that at Tessa's company, that's how it would be handled, that somebody would look at the process, that it would be a problem would be an opportunity to learn. I'm sure we've all had experiences.
Which is common sense. I mean, why would you try to hide the problem? And
I agree.
I mean, so yes, of course, I would say.
It seems simple, but that's not how it's often.
No, of course. I know. I can imagine, and I think the easy thing for me is because I'm also a shareholder, and thanks to the fact that I'm the son of my father, I got into this position. But a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, the CEO at the top is someone who had to work for 10, 15, 20 years to get to that position. So if you have the feeling that you did everything right to get to that position, that means that you have built your power in the company. And a lot of the things that I do is I don't want to be the powerful guy in the company. I want to be everyone as powerful as I am. But if you had to work yourself for 15 years to get to that powerful position, I think it's much more difficult to give it away again. And that's something that I often see. And it's even and it's even more, it's the people, or most of the time, the person who gets to the position of the CEO is specifically the person who is interested in having power. So in many companies, I think the person that is the CEO, he is the CEO, but not always for the good reason. And then, of course, you have a very a difficult situation, and I don't see a solution to that straight away. But for me, it was more easy when I started. We had 30 people in the company. I mean, we were a small family business. Okay, I had the title of CEO, but I mean, everybody knew each other, and now we have grown into a group of several companies with a bit more people. But for me, it's easy to say, well, look, I'm not interested in gaining more power. I had the power from the start, thanks to the fact that I'm the son of my father. So it's not always. I would say it's not always honest for me to blame bigger companies who have a completely different structure and where other things are at stake than in my position. I would say I have a very easy position to do what I have done. In other positions, I think it's way more difficult.
It's a very humble way to look at it, Thijs.
But
I don't think you have an easy position.
It is.
You just have a very mature attitude to this position. And,
combination, maybe.
But can leaders be trained on the specifics of trust and for them to have the psychological safety to give up control? Because usually they don't exercise control out of bad intentions. They just feel that it's better that way, right? They know the right way. Also, that gives them the reassurance that everything is under control. I look after my people, I look after the company, we're going where we need to be going. Can these people be shown a different way?
For me, it's a very general question. I don't like these general questions because my answer would be that some people who have the potential, if they come into this kind of context, of course they can learn. But other people who don't like to be in this kind of context, who choose for a very strict hierarchy, for example, and who believe in another system, I don't think that they can become that kind of leader. Maybe 10% of them can change, but the other 90 who are really convinced about a different style of leadership, I don't think if the intrinsic motivation is not in them to have it, I don't think you can form that. So I would say it always depends on the person, the specific person who is in front of you, to say whether it's something that he or she can learn or not.
Michael, what's your view? Because I know you guys work with companies, helping them build trust. Do you echo Thijs' sentiment, or have you had cases where the right way needed to be shown, and then people have the epiphany and they follow?
I've been working in both low trust and high trust organizations of different sizes. So what I realized was the difference was, of course, the different level of trust, but that's not so helpful in this in this point of the conversation. But the difference in the amount of fear that was in the organization, and this kind of answers why many small family-owned companies with leaders, CEOs who don't have to prove why they are where they are, like I hear a bit from you, Thijs, why there is less fear in this organization, in the relationship between the company, the managers, and the employees, etc., than in many larger organizations. I don't say all of them, but in many larger organizations, I realized that there is a lot of fear of rejection, fear of pain, to be embarrassed, exposed, cut off, whatever pain we can imagine that can happen there, or inadequacy. There's like these three kinds of pain that we managers are fear the most, that we could just not be good enough. So very often what we see is that then leaders, but also employees, whoever's part of the organization, holds to the chair, right? The higher the fear, especially in change projects, change transition phases, we stick to the chair that we're sitting on. And this kind of fear is definitely harming trust, right? So how can we, the question, and here's actually Lauren, I think, really a specialist on how can we provide psychological safety to every single person in the company, including the CEO. How can we calm the elements of this organization, every individual's old brain, from being scared, from defending itself, from being harmed, right? How can we create this psychological safety? And maybe Lauren, you want to share some approaches there that we found out about.
Yeah, I love this question because when we first started a couple of years ago, what we were doing was basically trying to help low trust companies become more highly trusted. And what we've realized is it is possible, just like it's possible for I believe, just for myself, that it's possible for anyone to change. You know, we've been growing and changing since the day we were born. Whether or not a person is willing to change depends on whether or not they realize that there's a problem. And so until you can get a company to realize that they intrinsically, they realize themselves, it can't be me coming in and telling them, hey, you have a trust problem. They have to realize that for themselves. And then it's also very important. The second part is that the company has the realization that the problem is starting from within. You know, that the fish rots from the head, and that if there's such a large problem, I don't say it's impossible to change the culture. I think it's possible, but it's a lot of effort, and I prefer to spend my time helping companies like Tess's that are already understand the basics of trust and understand it, like not only cognitively, but like really live it, how to take that trust and make it a competitive advantage. So how to leverage that trust, how to steer that trust, how to make it more obvious to the customer, how to benefit from the things that they're already doing well. To me, that's a much better use of my time than trying to come in and convince someone that they have a problem.
I'm aware that we've only got 2 minutes left, and there's so much advice that we got from you already. Could you summarize your best advice on building trust in 7 words? Any volunteers?
I can start if you want to.
Please.
So 7 words. My 7 words would be brutally honest, be patient, and be nice. And
love it.
The last one is a very simple one, but I know that Google more than 10 years ago did a very big research in marketing. They spent several millions of dollars to see what really worked, and their conclusion was be nice.
Yeah.
Because it works.
Again, common sense. Michael?
Well, my summary would be: trust is the currency of relationships, as Tess said, and relationships are the essence of business. So the advice is to really take trust seriously, create the awareness that trust deserves, and start actively thinking about what to do with trust, because that's, at the end of the day, your business.
That was very valuable. More than 7 words, but you are forgiven. And Lauren?
Oh, it's a big ask. I would say my best advice is that, my best follow-up is that trust is not thought, trust is felt. So if you want to improve trust in your company, start with you. Start on the inside with yourself, and that will carry forward, going forward to everybody else.
Love it. Such different perspectives, and combined, I feel we had an all-round discussion from experience to trust and how to build customer loyalty and also employee loyalty, which is not to be underestimated. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're all extremely busy, and I hope the audience enjoyed the discussion. If you have any follow-up questions that you didn't have a chance to ask today, please feel free to message me directly, and then I will either answer if I know the answer or reach out to experts and direct you the right way. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.